Hi, and welcome to training on the VariQuest Trifecta 800 3D printer. I'm Heidi Glasso, and I'll be walking you through today's training. I'm so glad your school has had an opportunity to invest in this 3D printer, which is designed exclusively for schools. You're absolutely going to love it. It's going to really aid you and other staff members in engaging all of your students, engaging them in hands-on learning and doing more of a project-based learning approach, whereby students are able to interact, touch, feel, interact with these various 3D prints for deeper cognition and better understanding. So it's a way to really bring your lessons to life in the way of a 3D print. So I think you're going to find this to be a valuable tool in your school, and again, it's designed to engage all learners. When I mention that it's designed exclusively for schools, I say that for a number of reasons. One of the reasons is the fact that it has a small footprint. So you can basically put it wherever in your classroom or in your school building. So whether it's in the classroom, in your maker space, in your STEM lab, in the media center, wherever you have it, it's a small footprint so that you can easily position it wherever. Some schools even put it on a cart. So if you are finding that you're wheeling it from classroom to classroom or room to room, having it on a cart is really helpful as well. So you can pretty much have your maker space on a cart that you wheel in and out of various classrooms for various activities and whatnot. So that's a neat or a nice asset with the Trifecta, of course. And then it's so easy to use as well. And it has a nice open footprint, as you can see as well, so that students can really get close and interact with the printer as the 3D prints are printing. So again, a great way to engage all learners. Now, hopefully you've had an opportunity to unbox your Trifecta and put it in its location. And then from there, once it is plugged in, you're going to want to have it powered on, of course, and the on-off switch is found on the back of the Trifecta on the right side. Once you have it turned on, then the first two steps that you need to take that are imperative for being able to print your prints is to have your bed level, your print bed leveled, I should say, and your filament loaded. So for that, we have two separate videos that will walk you through better detail on how to level that print bed and how to load the filament. So I'm going to refer you to those videos for that information. You can find those on our VariQuest Resource Center. And if you're not familiar with our VRC, it's an exclusive website designed specific for customers, valued customers like you, where you can obtain free resources that are going to help you maximize your investment, including a lot of training videos. So I'll talk about how to get logged in if you haven't already done that at the end of this training. But if you already have your login, from the home page, you'll notice on the left margin, we list all of our VariQuest tools. You would just simply click on the Trifecta, click on training, and that's where you will find the bed leveling and filament loading videos that are very detailed as far as the step-by-step instructions. So you'll want to consult those videos. And as I zoom in a little closer to talk a little bit more about just some of the general things as it relates to the Trifecta, you will notice on the glass build plate that rests on this build platform, on the plate itself, we have blue painter's tape. And that's because we use a plant-based PLA filament. This is a biodegradable filament that is completely safe for schools and students to use. It doesn't emit any messy or any odors of any kind, and as I said, it's completely safe. And because it's plant-based and the way it's designed, that's how we're able to have this nice open footprint, because nothing heats up nothing heats up except for the hot end nozzle. The hot end nozzle you'll find is located up on top. There is a little yellow piece that goes around the hot end nozzle to signify that it does get hot and you don't want to touch that area. But that's virtually the only area that you need to be aware of, or that your students need to be aware of. Otherwise, everything is at room temperature. So again, they can get close, they can watch the 3D prints come to life, they can get a nice bird's eye view as well, and it's completely safe. When I talk about the hot end, just to let you know, when it does heat up to its maximum temperature, it is 220 degrees Celsius, which is about 430 degrees Fahrenheit. So absolutely make sure students know to keep their hands out of that reach, but again, everything else is safe. And getting back to this plant-based filament, it doesn't adhere directly to the glass build plate. That's why we have the blue painter's tape to create that adhesion. And the blue painter's tape is such a simple solution because when you need to replace the tape, you just peel off the strips and replace it with new. So it's very, very easy to maintain and to use. And of course, you can get the blue painter's tape anywhere. And we did also give you a roll of the tape with your investment. But this is all described in better detail in the bed leveling video that I referred you to. So, and regarding the bed leveling video too, it is important, it's essential actually, to have your bed properly leveled so that you get a good print each and every time. Once you go through the video and through the initial steps of leveling your bed, you should be good to go. Unless, of course, you were to bring your trifecta to maybe a science fair or some other event that's going on, and it's being transported elsewhere, then you'll have to re-level the bed. But otherwise, while it's in your school and not getting jostled about, you should be good to go. So watch the video. That's going to be very, very helpful to you. The other video, again, is how to load your filament. Before I talk any further about that, I will also say, as important as it is to load your filament properly, it's important to unload it and store it properly as well. Because it is a plant-based filament, it is subjected to different temperatures and humidity levels at your school. So when you unbox your filament, you'll find that it comes in a vacuum sealed pouch, and included in the vacuum sealed pouch is a desiccant pack. So hold on to both the plastic pouch and the desiccant pack. When you're not using your filament, put it back in the pouch with the desiccant pack, store it back in the box, and keep it on your bookshelf that way at room temperature, and that's going to prevent it from being affected by different temperatures and whatnot. Our filament comes in 15 different colors, so you can have a nice library of the various colors. And our filament is a high-grade filament, tested and approved and recommended to be used always with the VariQuest Trifecta. Now the filament does load in the back of the trifecta. In case you were wondering, if you turn your trifecta around, you'll see a hook that it rests on, and it loads that way. And again, the video that I'm referring you to will give you those great instructions. So make sure to get your filament loaded, your bed leveled, and then you're ready to go. Then you're ready to begin printing. Now, as I talk about as I mentioned about the hot end nozzle earlier, just a couple things on that. Of course, that's the filament that's loaded down through the hot end nozzle, and that's the extruder, if you will, that will extrude the filament layer by layer by layer as it's creating your 3D print. That hot end nozzle is a user replaceable piece. So just so you know that too, that if it should become clogged at any time, you can't undo that clog, but you can purchase a new hot end from VariQuest and replace that very easily. And we've got a video that talks about how to, or instructions anyway, step-by-step instructions that guide you through how to replace that hot end nozzle. So just be aware of that. And then once everything is ready to go, you're ready to begin, and you can create some really awesome 3D prints, as I mentioned, that coincide with your lessons and that help with a lot of other types of activities that you might have going on within your school. Now, as we talk about those 3D prints, and just a couple examples that I have, first of all, you did receive with your trifecta, you received an SD card that gives 5 free, ready-to-go prints. So what I would do, once you have everything set up, is take that SD card. By the way, it uses SD versus USB. Your SD card gets inserted in the base of the trifecta. But once it's a print-ready file, which those 5 are, just insert it, and you'll notice that you have a nice display in the base of your trifecta as well, and you've got this knob, and that helps you navigate the different menu options. So you turn the knob and you push in to select your option. But you'll see the various prints listed there, and just one of them is this crystal that you could, that I recommend you print right off the bat, just to see how this technology works if it's new to you, and get familiar with the printing process. There is also a test print too that I should add. That's probably your best choice for once you've leveled the bed and loaded the filament. Call up that test print and do a test print just to make sure that it's properly leveled and it's not lifting and or gooping up in any way. If it's lifting off the print bed, generally that means that the print bed is too far and needs to be raised a little bit. If it's gunking up and layering it in thick layers, then that's usually an indicator that the bed is too close and you need to bring it down a little bit. Again, that's all addressed in that other video that I mentioned, but that test print will help guide you to make sure it's all set to go. Then go ahead and choose whether it's the gem, we've got a vase, we've got our VariQuest logo. Choose one of those prints just to become familiar, as I mentioned. And I happen to be holding a large 3D print right now because I also wanted to highlight that in spite of its small footprint, which again is nice for schools, you have a large build volume. So this is one of our largest prints that you can make. It stands almost 9 inches tall by almost 7 inches wide. So you've got a large print volume, although it's a small tool to begin with. So keep that in mind and take advantage of those free prints and see how the process works that way. And then beyond that, you're probably asking yourself, okay, so where do I find my 3D prints going forward? And I always like to say you can either make a file or you can find a file. So 2 things to note. First of all, I do want to highlight that, and maybe some of you have already invested in our Filament package. We have a curriculum that coincides with our Trifecta 3D printer. So we've partnered with a company by the name of STEMfuse, and they have online lessons and activities that correlate 3D printing with classroom instruction. And it covers all subject areas. And if you did invest in a 2-year subscription, then you're all set to go. Basically, you are able to access those lessons online. And by the way, you are able to get some free training directly from STEMfuse. They will help you get started using your Filament software. But basically, you go online to access those lessons, and within each lesson, you've got a teacher guide that will guide the teacher step by step through the lesson. And it is included in each lesson is a 3D print. And that 3D print, those instructions for students are given in that lesson as well. So students know how to create that particular 3D print that again correlates with that lesson. And of course, this is all supplemental to the curriculum that's being taught in your classroom, but it is ideal, especially if you're not sure of what you want to print from the Trifecta and how to make that correlation to project-based learning. So if you don't have STEMit, I would recommend that you reach out to your VariQuest education consultant, and they can provide a quote on this software. But again, it's an ideal fit for our Trifecta, and it gives you some great lessons and activities that are really going to help your teachers be successful with this technology in their classrooms. So that's a little bit about STEMit and how you can find 3D prints through those lessons and activities. Also, what STEMit does too is it gives students the opportunity to do some coding and to do some CAD design. And there is a program that is called Tinkercad, or you can use another CAD design program, SketchUp. There's many out there, but I do know Tinkercad is one that is very user-friendly. You may have heard of it already, but it is a software program, a CAD design program, that is free for most schools to download. So you can download that software onto individual computers and have students become familiar with how to use Tinkercad. They essentially then can be building their own 3D prints. And again, through STEMit, there's a lot of instruction on how to use Tinkercad and how to how students can navigate through that software to build that particular 3D print that's referenced in that lesson. So that's really where the learning is going to take place, is when students can be designing their own 3D prints through a CAD design program like the ones I just mentioned, or maybe there's another one that you already have in your school. But bottom line is that's going to give them the opportunity to trial and error. What works, what doesn't work, what do they have to redo. They can have, it invokes collaboration, peer collaboration, and it just really promotes creative thinking, critical thinking, etc. So definitely consider Tinkercad and get familiar with that program yourself if you're looking for a solution like that, and you and your students, again, can make your own 3D prints. There's also a lot of user communities out there. So I said you can either make a file, so I kind of addressed that, or you can find a file. So if you go out to maybe the Smithsonian or other science websites, science museums and whatnot, will give you some print-ready files that you can just download and print from the Trifecta. So again, check out some of those user communities with those free downloadable files, and then you're not creating that file, it's already ready to go, but you're still watching it come to life. And I think it's, there are some great resources out there. Just be mindful of the fact that when you are choosing a file that's already pre-made, it has to be an STL or an OBJ file. So those are the two accepted file formats. That's in your user's guide as well. And from there, you're able to print successfully to the Trifecta. Some of the print-ready files that we have come upon through various sites is, like for example, we have this animal cell that is really great for students to interact with. We've got this jaw. I think it's either a dinosaur or a wolf. I'm not 100% sure, but another great 3D print that we found that through a user community already and set to go. A bust of JFK is another one as well. So again, lots of sites out there. And again, I can't encourage you enough to consider that Filament software that will give you some print-ready files and also allow students to create their own with simple instruction as well. The other thing I wanted to point out, on our VariQuest Resource Center, under Trifecta, we have some downloadable files as well. Now they are files that are geared a little bit more for middle school to high school level or age students, so keep that in mind, but how to make a bridge, how to, for the entrepreneurs out there, how to create these little dog tags to sell at a book fair or in their school student-based enterprise. I mean, there's all kinds of, 12 exactly, different lessons for consideration where, again, you've got the lessons that give you the step-by-step instruction and then the 3D print that goes along with it. So keep all that in mind, and just say to yourself, either making a file through a simple CAD design program, or finding a file through some of the resources that we provide, or through some user communities that are out there. So I hope that is helpful to you. Once you have your 3D print, once you have the file designed, or you have found a file that you want to print, you then need to bring it into our Trifecta software. And our Trifecta software is a slicing software. So basically, it's going to build your 3D print layer by layer by layer. And it's going to do it digitally on a computer, or if you have the VariQuest Design Center, through the VariQuest Design Center. But once you have that properly sliced, we call it slicing, once you have that taken care of, then you export it onto an SD card. Now you have your print-ready file, and it also changes it to G-code. And once you have that on your SD card, then you pop it into your Trifecta and you proceed to print it, and you proceed to see it come to life. So as far as the Trifecta software goes, it is a free download that, again, you can find on our VariQuest Resource Center. Under Trifecta, just click on the Trifecta, or click on, Trifecta software, and you will find it available for any device, whether you want to download it onto a Mac or a PC, or you want to put it on a book, we do have the cloud-based version as well, and it is a free download. So download that Trifecta software on all of your various computers so you have that ready to go. And it's basically like before you print anything. It's another way to change your printer settings and get everything the way you want it to be before you print it. So you can change your printer settings, you can, again, it slices it, building it layer by layer digitally, and then it also changes it to G-code. So with that said, I'm going to move down to the VariQuest Design Center where I have the Trifecta software preloaded. So once you are ready to open up the Trifecta software, just click on the Trifecta icon. Again, whether you're doing it from your design center or from a computer. Then what you want to do next is find the file that you want to slice and print. I happen to have my STL files, on my thumb drive, so I am choosing that drive. I'm clicking on the file where my file can be found. Once you have the 3D print selected, by clicking on it, just click OK. That's what actually launches the VariQuest software, and you're going to see that once it launches, it puts your object on the build plate. Here's where you can, as mentioned earlier, you can adjust your printer settings before you print. So I'm going to review those with you real quick, and then we'll proceed to slice the 3D print as well. In your user's guide, pages 15 and 16 go through each and every one of these setting options that I'm reviewing with you now, so you can become more familiar on your own time as well. But a couple things to note. First of all, down below, here's where you have the option to resize your object before you print. So it comes in at 100%. If you want to make it twice as big or maybe half as big, you can make those adjustments very easily. If you have your keyboard, you would just hover over it with your mouse and type in the percentage that you want, and you'll find that the height, the width, and the depth adjust automatically, but you can adjust those on your own as well. But if you don't have a keyboard, like right now I'm just using my mouse, there is a white button that you can click on right by the object itself that you can click on, and when you drag your mouse back and forth, you can see how it makes the object bigger or smaller, and it is changing my scale down below. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller because I want to take a little less time to print this. Obviously, the bigger it is, the more time it's going to take to print, but really there is no time limit. Keep that in mind, that you can print as long as you've got filament. You can print for as long as you need to get the desired object that you want. But that's how you can scale it and change the size of the object. The other thing I wanted to mention is down below you can duplicate. If you know you want to do multiples of this gem, you can click on the duplicate button and you can enter in the quantity that you want. There's also up above this import button that you can click on. This allows you to bring in additional prints. So you can go back to where you were and bring in another print, for example, and it just positions it right onto your build plate. Now, if ever you find that the object is gray like that, then you know it's out of bounds. So just keep that in mind. You always want it to stay within the printing range, and you always want to make sure that it's represented in green versus gray. You can always reset. There's a reset button too to where you were before. If you don't want a particular print on there, like I don't need to print two objects right now, there is a delete button as well. So I deleted that, and then again, I'm going to reset it. You will find also that sometimes, and there's also a center button, by the way, too. So it just makes it really easy to get it back to the way you want it. Sometimes you will find, and I did reset it, so I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit smaller like I did before. But sometimes you're going to find that your print comes in kind of kittywampus. It doesn't lay flat when it puts it on the build plate. If ever that should happen, there is a lay flat button so that you can click on that to make sure that it's laying on the biggest, flattest surface to just ensure that you have that added stability when it's printing. So if, for example, it comes in a little off like that, just click on the lay flat button and it again will make that adjustment for you. You have these different access rings as well that you can, students can use to see the print, at all kinds of different, in all different kinds of angles, etc. So that's a little bit about that. It's up above that you're going to find your printer settings. So that's what I'm going to review with you right now, starting with resolution. And what I love about this software program, it's so user-friendly in the fact that you can hover over the particular setting and it gives you a little drop-down window that tells you exactly what that's going to do. So as I talk about resolution and as I click on it, you will find that there are 4 different settings for resolution, ranging from 50 microns all the way up to 300. So 50, 100, 200, and 300 microns is how the resolution is measured. Now 300, the default is 200 microns, so you can leave it at that if you want, or if you need to make some adjustments, that's when you would select a different resolution. The smaller the number, so the 50 microns, that's going to give you the finest print. That means that the layer of filament is as thin as it can be, and you're going to get a very solid, just a really fine, high quality print when you select 50 microns. Now with a gem like this, it doesn't really matter, so I could leave it at 200 or even bump it up to 300 microns. The resolution isn't going to be as good, meaning you're going to see more lines going across, representing the different bands of filament, but it still turns out to be a great print. Now, keep in mind that the finer the quality, the higher the resolution, meaning the lower the number in microns, the longer it's going to take to print. So you do want to keep that in mind as well. If I set this to 50 microns, it's going to take a lot longer to print than if I have it at 300 microns. So that's resolution. You also have infill, and infill determines or is basically the print density, how dense the print is going to be, how much filament is filled in that particular object. You can, when you click on the drop-down menu or drop-down options, you'll see that it ranges from 0%, which means it's going to be completely hollow, or you can choose 18% or 30%. That's infill, and again, that determines the object or the print's or density, I should say, the density of the object. Now, if you want to go higher than 30%, you really want it to be a solid infill and a more dense object, you can always go in the upper left corner under Advanced and bring up an Advanced Settings window, and here you will find infill listed, where you can set it all the way up to 100%, from 0 to 100%. So again, that is the print's density. The higher the infill, of course, the more filament that you're going to use, and the more time it's going to take to print. So do keep that in mind as well. I'm going to get back to this window in a second, but that is what infill is. Next you have wall, and wall is the thickness of the outer perimeter of the print. So the wall ranges from 1 to 4, and the higher the number, the thicker the wall. So if you need some added stability, you might want to select 3 or 4 for a thicker wall around your print. The default is 2, and for this particular object, 2 is just fine. So I'm going to leave it at that, but that is wall. Now next to wall is support. Support is not activated, but you will want to activate that if you have overhanging structures. It is important that that you create that stability for those overhanging structures. So think about like an eagle with its wings fully spanned out, for example. When it's printing and it gets to those wings, if those wings aren't supported, they're going to collapse right away. So what you would want to do is either activate exterior or full support. Exterior is basically going to add that support from the overhanging structure down to the build plate. And it's just thin strands of filament that are going to adhere those two together to make sure that the wings in this case don't collapse. Full support adds support and meaning layers of filament, strands of filament, wherever those overhanging structures are. So it might, even if it's going from one overhanging structure on the print to another and then down to the build plate, it will do that. So we'll figure out where it needs to build the support, not just from the overhanging structure to the build plate, but anywhere that it's needed. So if you're not sure, just select full, and it will build those support layers. When your print is done, those support layers break off very easily because again, there's such thin strands of filament. So you just break them off and you're ready, you're good to go. And again, this is, as I talked about, that trial and error process. Think about students, going to print maybe without having support activated, and their object collapses right away. So then they have to go back to the drawing board and figure out what went wrong, and it will become clear to them that, hey, I probably should have activated support, and that would have helped. So again, it's all part of that hands-on learning approach, and really engaging with these different objects that are being printed. So that is what support is. Filament, you probably aren't going to have to do a whole lot with this, but as I mentioned, the filament is biodegradable, plant-based, so the diameter of the filament can change periodically. So we do provide a Trifecta accessories kit. If you don't have that, I encourage you to invest in that. It's not very expensive, and what you get with that accessory kit, one of the items is a caliper tool so that you can periodically measure the diameter of your filament and make those adjustments accordingly with the up and down arrow symbols. Then you've got speed and temperature. You will not need to change those settings unless you're getting into some real advanced printing. Otherwise, just leave the speed and temp as they are. But you can change all these other settings according to how you want your print to turn out. As I opened up that advanced settings window earlier, I'm going to do that again and point out a couple other things. I mentioned how you can adjust your infill, make your object more dense by increasing it beyond 30% through advanced settings. Another thing that you can adjust that I want you to be aware of is skirt. Skirting is when you're first going to print something. It lays down a very thin layer that basically outlines the shape of your print. I always like to say it's like a ketchup bottle. When you're going to use your ketchup bottle, you always have that liquid substance that comes out first before the ketchup does. That's kind of what skirting is. And skirting is nice when, and it's set, by the way, to do 2 swipes around the shape of the object on your build plate. So when it's skirting, you want to watch that. You want to look at it, see how the filament's coming out. Is it adhering to the build plate? Is it lifting up? Is it gunking up? Are you having any problems? If so, you can pause your print job and make those micro adjustments to the level of your print bed and kind of remedy that before it goes to print. So that's why skirting is important, and you can keep a close eye on that. If you feel like 2 times around isn't enough, you can adjust that. So maybe you want it to skirt 5 times. This is where you can make that adjustment. The other option or thing that I wanted to point out is what's called brim. Brim is also not activated, but you can activate it easily by clicking here and choosing activate. So what it does basically is it just for those objects that need some added support on the build plate, you can activate brim, where it builds thin layers of filament from the base of the object and adheres to the build plate. So even if you have a properly leveled print bed, you've maintained it well, and you're still getting a lifting effect, you might want to activate brim to counter that lifting effect and to keep it from warping on you. I always like to give the example of the Eiffel Tower. If you're printing that, you've got a tall tower with 4 thin, skinny little legs. So your base, it can get a little wobbly and it can get more difficult to support that taller structure. So for that, you would want to activate brim because again, it's just going to secure the foot of the print to the build plate so that it doesn't lift up and or warp on you. Note that when you take it off your build plate, you'll have those thin strands of filament under the base of the print. Sometimes those are a little harder to get off, so you want to use like a chisel or a file to file those down. But that's what brim is. And that's really those are the features that I like to call out in training as it relates to the Trifecta software, the advanced setting options that you may or may not choose from time to time. So just wanted to cover that. Once you have everything the way you want it, then you're ready to go ahead and slice your object. Up here in the upper right is where you see the slice button. Just go ahead and click on that. And as you can see, it's kind of like frosting a layered cake. It just builds it layer by layer by layer until it's done. So it does it digitally, and that's how it's going to print on your Trifecta printer. So that's how that works. Once that has occurred, you'll notice down below that it does give you the approximate weight of your 3D print, and it tells you approximately how much time it's going to take to print it. So that's very helpful information. We also on our VariQuest Resource Center have a cost calculator. So if you, again, on the home page, click on Trifecta, click on the cost calculator, you can input the estimated weight, and it will give you an approximate cost for that object. Great for your student-based enterprises where you are tracking costs because maybe you're selling different things in your school store or whatever. It's nice to be able to calculate what the cost will be of that 3D, an estimated cost, I should say, of that 3D print. I always like to show this too, how you can just kind of flip the build plate around to see it from all kinds of different angles as well. I also wanted to mention that our Trifecta has one hot end nozzle, as I kind of alluded to earlier, and that means that you can load one color of filament at a time. But we recognize that there are going to be times that you want to do a multicolored object. And I'll just tell you too, that's another feature of the Trifecta that's so nice for schools, because having only one hot end to worry about is really going to help with cutting down any maintenance issues, any problems, etc. So nice to have just that one hot end nozzle. But again, we know that periodically you'll want to do a full color print from time to time. So the way that you can achieve that is down below. After it's been sliced, you'll see that you have this bar with this arrow. When you move the arrow with your mouse, you can see how it's, again, recreating or building that object layer by layer. To add color, different colors to your object, all you do is take your arrow and pull it to the point where you want to have it come to a pause so you can change out your color. You put your arrow at that desired spot, and then you just click on the plus sign, and that is going to pause your print job so that you can take out your existing color, put in a new color, and resume where you left off. Then you can take the arrow again. You can build in all your pauses in advance, of course, and do it all the way to the end. So here you can see I'm going to be able to get a multicolored object. I can do 3 different colors, and again, it will automatically pause so I can take out my one color, put in my new, and achieve a multicolored object that way. Another use, and we have so many schools that have engaged their students even further by using our clear filament, printing their object, and then having students paint their object any color that they want with acrylic paint is what we recommend. But they can really take ownership of what they've created by adding some pops of color and painting that 3D print as well. So that's another way to achieve a multicolored object. Now I'm going to go ahead and edit this because I don't want it to print in multicolors right now. So there is an edit button that takes you back to where you were, and you can just easily slice it again if you should go back and make any edits. And there we go. We've got it perfectly sliced. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save what I've done. I can save it on my SD card, which of course is what I need to do in order to print it on the Trifecta, but I can also save it on my computer to bring it up at a later date as well. But I'm going to click on the SD card. It just takes seconds to save it, and then I've got a button right here that allows me to properly remove my SD card. So I clicked on that button. Now I know it's safe to remove, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out again so I can grab a hold of my SD card. And you'll find that once you have that and you insert it in your 3D print, that's again where everything comes to life. Insert my SD card. And I'll zoom in a little bit on this base so you can see what I'm doing here, but I inserted the SD card. I've got my different menu options in this display. It's highlighted print, so I can just take my knob and push in to select that option. Here are all the different print-ready files that I can review and select for printing. So here's my Crystal. It says crystal.g. Of course, that represents that it's in G code. That's the file format as mentioned. So I'm just going to select my Crystal. And now we'll go ahead and make sure we got a good shot of the trifecta as it gets ready to print that Crystal. Right now what it's doing is, in the display it shows it too, it is telling me it's heating up, the hot end nozzle is heating up to the desired temperature. And you've got a progress bar that shows you how much time remains until it reaches 220 degrees Celsius. It really doesn't take very long at all, which is nice. And once it is ready to go and it's at the desired temperature, you're going to notice that it's going to extrude a thin line of filament right here at the front of the build plate. There will also be a little, it almost looks like a little bubble, if you will, a filament that extrudes. And that is another way to determine if your build plate is properly leveled. If that little bead of filament comes out and it's really squished and you can hardly see that it's a bead, then you know your build plate is too high. If it comes and it's perfectly round and it's not at all squished, then you know your build plate is too low. And again, you can always make those micro adjustments as needed. You want that bead to appear slightly squished. It's like using a plastic straw and kind of pushing down on that straw. You just want it to appear slightly squished, and then you know you've got a properly leveled bed. The other thing I'll point out is in this window, it tells you, again, how long it's going to take for that print to complete itself. And while it's printing, it always gives you how much time has lapsed. So that's a really good indicator, so you have an idea of what to expect and what remains before it's completely printed. So as you can see right now, it's skirting. As I mentioned, it skirts that desired amount of time. Again, default is to have it skirt 2 times around, but you can change that as I mentioned. And it's a good time to take a quick glance to make sure that the print is adhering properly. If not, you have, again, your dial down below. You can hover over, you can push on it and select pause, and you can pause it so that you can make those micro adjustments. And when you watch that bed leveling video, that's where it's going to show you these thumb screws that are at 3 different checkpoints underneath the build plate. You've got one in the center, one in the back left, and one in the back right. Those are what you're going to adjust by turning either clockwise or counterclockwise to raise the build plate or bring it down. But mine is appearing to print successfully right now, and it really is quite fascinating to watch. I can't wait for you to try it on your own. So we'll give it a couple more minutes to print. Obviously, I don't want to keep you for another hour and a half, so we won't complete this process, but hopefully I've given you the information necessary for you or needed for you to get started and be successful with your 3D printer. I will also note, while this is getting underway, that you did receive a USB cable with your trifecta, and that's because that plugs into the back when you want to download one of our periodic firmware updates. If ever there is a firmware update, we will alert you, and that's the way to connect your trifecta to your computer to complete that update. So that's the only time, because of course it is using SD technology, that's the only time that you're going to use the USB is when we alert you of a firmware update. The other thing I was going to say too, if you don't have an SD reader on your computer, so you've got your Trifecta software on the computer, you don't have an SD reader, you can get a portable one, which just gives you a USB connection, and it's a portable SD reader that easily connects to your computer. So you've got that, and it's doing a pretty good job right now. I'm going to go ahead and zoom back out again. Because I also wanted to just highlight for a couple more minutes here our VariQuest Resource Center. Again, we've got a whole variety of resources, and I was touching on those as we went through today's training. So first of all, a couple takeaways that I want to make sure you remember is, again, when you're getting ready to find a file or to figure out what it is that you want to print, again, just remember you can either make a file, and that's getting yourself and your students involved in a basic CAD design program, and you're actually designing that 3D print on your own, or students are doing it on their own or in a group setting. And again, that's really where the learning takes place. Remember, the two file formats are STL and OBJ, or you can find a file on any number of user community sites that are available. We did give you the SD card with 5 print-ready files to help get you started. And as I talk about the VRC, VariQuest Resource Center, remember there are 12 lessons that are ready to download and be available to your teachers as well, that do come with a 3D print as well. So those are great ways to get started. If you're wondering how to get your login established with the VariQuest Resource Center, just go to our main website, VariQuest.com. On the right side, you'll see a button that reads Login or Register for the VRC. Click on that button and fill out the digital form with your contact info. Indicate that it's the trifecta that you have in your school. There's a label in the back of your trifecta that gives the serial number, so you'll want to record that serial number. Once you have your login established, you will find on the home page there's a button that you can click on to either upload a complete staff list, so that we then, with that list, are notified to send all those individuals their own welcome to the VRC email. Basically, they bypass that logging in information and they get their login already established. So you can have multiple users accessing this valuable website as often as needed. So you can invite everybody in your school to have access to the website. And I encourage you to do so because there are so many valuable resources. And once you're logged in and you've spread the word and others have their login as well, and you're visiting the site, as it relates to the trifecta, again, you're going to find very helpful videos on loading the filament and leveling your print bed. You're going to find a really helpful video on just the overall use of the how the trifecta performs, how it prints, and what else you can share with others. That's where you'll find the cost calculator, our accessories kit, etc. There's lots of options there for you. And lastly, I really encourage you to consider Filament as well. I think that software that correlates with 3D printing is going to be very successful, or help you to be very successful with the 3D printer that you have just invested in. So with that, I'm making slow progress here, but it's going to turn out, and it's actually, when it's all done, it's going to be a little blue gem like this. So you're going to have a lot of fun with this 3D printer. It's going to be a great asset in your school. So I hope you found this training to be helpful. If you need some additional support, our 800 number is 1-800-328-0585. Just listen to the prompts that will connect you either to our tech support department or customer service. And certainly you can reach out to your VariQuest education consultant at any time as well, or your local VariQuest authorized dealer. So thanks for attending training today, and good luck with your new investment.